Now it is. Now we're live.
Okay, I was just going to say something before we went.
It's too late. So we've just been having welcome to Willem and James's creative sessions where we talk about playing a role-playing game. I've got my D6s here that we never use because we have end up talking about other stuff. So just before we hit live, we have a really interesting discussion about the
I thought because last time we did a general discussion, so this time, I'm looking for a mug. What is your mug again?
Oh, mine. This is a cork-covered cup. The reason I like it says Killer Coffee on it. It's from a brand called Lucky's, I think.
I have to because I need to get a mug. I had a couple of late night, early morning meetings, and found myself with a big cup of Starbucks. I'm thinking, wait a minute, it's not. I don't necessarily want to be a Starbucks customer. It's expensive, and I do like a big mug of coffee.
Yeah.
In the morning, and in Paris, the only ones to offer filter coffee in a large cup are Starbucks. That's the only thing. Otherwise, you get small coffees or Americanos.
Yeah, I'm black coffee all the way.
Which I'm not necessarily against Americanos, but and depending on the outlet, some sell an Americano for a large amount of money, and it's just like one shot of espresso with a lot of water. I'd rather have a filter, or in my case, I use a French press. Anyway, it's not an episode about coffee.
It is about coffee, but it's about
coffee
mugs.
right now.
It's about
so I thought I need to get a thermos mug that really closes, so I can bring it on my bike.
It has to close.
Well, not my bike, but I had close and not have any opportunity to spill while I'm on the bike.
That's my thing, because I move around rooms a lot at school.
Drive, but very often.
I move around a lot at school. I'm carrying a box, and I was having a mug, but I'd spill everywhere. It's so irritating. So this has been my savior, and it feels cool with cork, and it doesn't keep it hot. But it allows it to cool down slowly, so I keep drinking it over a long period of time.
Oh, so it's not a thermos, but
it's not thermos. But it's because I found with the thermos, I put the coffee in, and it would stay so hot that I wouldn't drink it. It was too hot to drink.
Oh yeah, that was the thing I started wondering about.
So if
it cools down slowly, that's good.
This cools down slowly. It's plastic, but covered in cork, and it looks cool, and it's faded a bit, but it does say Killer Coffee on it with this skull. So it's become associated with me. Good. I like it. And after that slight digression into coffee cups and coffee,
which is already a digression from playing the role-playing game that we planned. But we don't have anybody. We're still we're live streaming like nobody's watching, so it's fine.
Yeah, but we were having a really interesting discussion about surveillance capitalism, which I'm really surprised you hadn't heard the phrase.
I think I don't know. I might have.
It's new to me. Like disaster capitalism was the other one that I knew about.
But that's the Naomi Klein shock doctrine thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but
so I talked about it with a friend, and I only just started No Logo, which I haven't really progressed on because I've been working on my master's degree thing.
Yep.
And also now I'm thinking I should progress a little bit, but I'm like, maybe I'll read a novel first, something a little bit lighter.
Right.
Anyway, but the surveillance capitalism. So I don't understand. I don't think maybe you've heard of it. I don't know. But it does. What we were talking about is the general state of the media and social media, and the people who profit from it, that seem to encourage and or maintain a general state of emotional, high emotional atmosphere. I was going to say distress, because that seems to be what's driving most activity, but it's not always distress. I mean, by anger, fear, those kinds of things that drive a lot of clicks, that keep people watching 24 hours news, that like bring people back to YouTube channels. And so the people who profit are media owners. They could be very massive, very, very big corporations, in my opinion. But the opinion being they profit and they tend to organize things around that. And that's anything from keeping cliffhangers, the way that reality shows are put together. I don't only mean like generating fear about the news. That's also part of it. but generating like thrill and excitement and wanting to see the next segment on the new hot reality show is kind of the same thing. And then equally, influencers, people who are pundits commenting on the news with various degrees of alternate views of what's going on, also profit from that state, because they exploit one concern or core belief of somebody or belief, and then they exploit it and drive them over into a bunch of other stuff. But basically, many of them, I believe, will be talking mostly nonsense. Not only there might be interesting things, and I'm sure there are things that I'm following that I find interesting, but that the guy is basically, it's his business or her. And so there is always a part of it. If it's a business, there's going to be a business interest in driving as many views as possible.
Yep.
To be able to maintain your revenue and or sell merchandise if that's what you do. But that's generally one of the mix of those two things, right? It's getting views to have advertising partners and or sell merchandising. And then where I was going just before we put this thing. Anyway, actually, my question back to you is, so what I didn't understand about the phrase surveillance capitalism, when you didn't define it, is what I thought surveillance capitalism is also just like, surveilling people, policing people, cameras, and everything else.
No, it's more because I stumbled across it I first read about it in Johan Hari's book about, what's it called? Shock. No, what's it called? Now I'm getting confused. The shock doctrine. It's called Stolen Focus. That's where he talked about it. And surveillance capitalism is every time you go online, there's a ton of information that's been gathered about you. So it feeds you what you want. So it keeps you watching.
Yes.
That's the idea. And that's the phrase that's used, and that's how it's defined. Because what drives it is the business interests. They're not interested in giving you good, logical, well thought out, in-depth content. They're interested in keeping you watching.
Yes.
So
but even people are putting out well thought out content. I mean, they have an interest in keeping you watching. It's like, I think it's varying degrees of how much they depend on that, but it is part of it.
I agree, totally agree. But it's very difficult.
And unconsciously, even with the best of intentions of doing the best content possible. And I'm sure there are people that I watch like that. There are, I know.
Yeah.
There is a bias, an unconscious one. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying it.
Because by the
way, just so you know, in case anybody watches it, I don't expect anybody is, but just before we started, I was running late because I started watching a video about it's in French, a interview of two journalists, one journalist interviewing another one who just published a book called The Dissidents, and it's a book examining all the different what is called conspiracy theorist type movements in France, and who were already there, but like got particularly strong in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. So and he did a whole bit of online research and started it in 2020 and followed a lot of those people, followed what was going on. And then last year, once he could, he went out to talk to them and all sorts of different wakes of life. And just, it's interesting. And then where I was going to go next, when you said, let's record, I was noticing how interesting it is that the journalist made two distinctions of the types of people he was looking at. One are, and then I'm sure he's going to say more. We're only at the beginning of the interview. The book sounds really interesting. I'm very interested in this type of stuff. But he was talking about people who might be just have a belief and or be skeptical and or are interested in what this person said on YouTube, Twitter, whatever, and share it back to other people.
Yeah.
And participate in the topic of the conversation at hand, which might be, a skeptic of the vaccine, for example, or anti-vax altogether, depending, whatever. But then he was making a clear distinction with the people who are the people we were just mentioning, who become media houses of themselves, influencers, make a business out of it, publish whatever. And he's like, within that, there's of course a lot of different types of people as well. but altogether, there's most of them, and most of the biggest ones have a business to run, and that's what's driving them. And they're driving a lot of misinformation and disinformation, it seems like. And he was just giving an example right now, as I stopped the video, of a doctor who has a channel that I came across last year or the year before, who seemed very interesting and quite how to say,
are they French?
Yeah, in French. Seemed to be reasonable skepticism, wholesome, quite progressive in the way
Credible.
he was talking. Well, to me, credible, but not. I mean, there's the credibility. That's a whole other thing. There's a bunch of people that believe it is, so I don't know, you know. But interesting to my viewpoints and matching with the way that I seem to see life. Right now, I haven't finished this segment, but he was like, the journalist just said, I had a long conversation with him. I watched a lot of his content. He seems to be quite reasonable. There's a lot of interesting arguments he makes about looking at, you know, finding out more about how it works, and as well as working with modern medicine, holistic medicine, the importance of being well emotionally and psychologically. And I was like, I watched a couple of his videos and I was like, oh, it sounds interesting. It's good to, you know, I agree with that. And then he said, well, I believe in looking at and judging people by their actions more so than what they're saying and who they associate with. And he thought that was interesting that this guy invited another YouTuber over for lunch or dinner for a meal, who's a food chef YouTuber. And apparently this food YouTuber is also a self-avowed extreme right national socialist. So this is where I stopped the video and I was like, oh, I looked at the time and it's like, I had to join you. But what it made me think of as we're progressing in this conversation is that the world is so complex. It's so easy to label people with certain stickers that are wrong, that you can't have a conversation on any other topic. But because we're complex and the world is complex, it's a shame not to be able to more easily have a conversation in depth with somebody to better understand what is driving them, who they are, and what's going on. Now, I totally understand to say, well, if you're self-avowed like racist, I say racist, so self-avowed national socialists, I would put that with a lot of labels going, okay, well, I don't know how much I really want to talk to you, how much I want to associate with you. But that said, depending on the context, I may well say, well, wait a minute, what does that mean? And what are you talking about? Because we then circling back to the emotional thing about like anger, outcry, clickbait, and everything else, it's difficult to have an in-depth conversation to understand somebody's point of view and what's going on with them. And I'm not making an apology of listening, although not making an apology to listen to say that there are certain viewpoints that are totally fine and we should all go talk to racists. But I'm saying although, because I'm reminded of two great episodes of the Love Plus Radio podcast from a few years ago about this person, and I'll have to go find his name again, who's a Black musician and made a whole career of listening to people in the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah.
You heard about that, right? That was a few years ago, and we talked about him. I can't remember his name right now. Jenkins something? I'm not sure. But fascinating. The dude just went and talked to them. I'm just mostly listening. And several people left the Ku Klux Klan who were massive, you know, lifelong racists, lifelong believers in white supremacy, in positions of leadership within that of Ku Klux Klan, leaving out of the result of the conversations with this guy. And that guy never tried to convince them of anything. Just they shared. According to the podcast interviews I listened to anyway. So that's just on the value of, even if you meet somebody who seems to have completely opposing views as yours. Now, and it's challenging because if you listen to if there's somebody that tells you they believe in something that is opposite to what you believe in, you have a reaction. And particularly, and even more so if it's a friend or somebody you like, or somebody you seem to appreciate. What's difficult is, okay, and I'm going to extrapolate because I haven't watched the rest of that video, is let's say that doctor in question, I don't know, I'm going into dangerous territory. I hope nobody watches this. Let's say that doctor is amenable to pretty racist ideas, but he is also a great doctor. Should I listen to his doctor advice? or his medical advice?
Yeah, I had a really difficult.
Or is it acceptable socially to say, this guy is he has a show on medical advice, and his medical advice is quite interesting, but he is also a very well-known racist. Is that acceptable? I don't know.
It's really interesting because I got into not an argument, but a discussion with a friend. There's a particular band whose music I really like. I've loved their music for a long time, and it reminds me of good times from nearly 30 years ago when I was at 18, like that kind of whole thing. Their stuff on guitar, like technically, musically, guitar, like everything I thought was amazing, really emotive. I only got to see him once live. And then I saw a video of the front man, like at the end of a gig, doing the white power salute and shouting white power at the end of the gig. I was like, oh.
Sorry, it's not funny, but
it's just,
it's not funny at all. It's crushing, actually.
No, it was crushing for me because I was like, whoa, okay. But then
at least it has the merit of being quite clear. It's not ambiguous whether they are or aren't.
Well, he then came out
then
and
he's
said,
maybe very provocative, but
yeah. He then came out and said, well, it was the emotion. I was drunk and I didn't think like that and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like,
well, yeah, but I mean, under the emotion of being drunk, it sounds like this is what you believe in.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I don't.
It's funny because you made me think of the whole controversies around J.K. Rowling, transphobia, radical feminism, and people say you should boycott Harry Potter because she's transphobic, and she's like, no, I'm not transphobic, but she never came on stage and said I hate trans people. So I mean, it's not funny, and none of this is funny. I'm laughing like kind of nervously. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a nervous.
This is the danger of putting things online.
I now can't listen to the music in the same way.
Well, no, of course not.
It's like and sometimes it will come
on.
Listen. I do. It comes on my Spotify, and I'm like it feels really good to listen to it. Yeah. But it's angry music.
It is my position on, generally speaking, I read a couple of things on that, on art. It's controversial, but if the artist is really great, then why deprive ourselves of their art, particularly if there's something to learn in addition and in more depth than the art itself?
It does. I found that emotionally, listening to that music it gave expression to a lot of the anger that I had and occasionally have in a more meaningful, positive way instead of just doing stupid stuff. I don't know. And yeah, but it's
difficult to listen to this kind of thing. It's I don't know.
It's what I was saying before we started recording is that in schools the depth of I'm really thinking about how I teach and thinking much more about this is what you need to know rather than here are some ideas. What do you think? I'm becoming much more like.
What did you teach? Like, here are some ideas. What do you think?
I
don't understand that. Sorry, I didn't follow.
So I used to teach much more about here are the main concepts.
Yeah.
Here are the main ideas, and what do you see? What do you think? And have a discussion about it, and then do some practice questions, and then give them feedback on their questions and how good they are, all that kind of stuff. I'm becoming much more of. There's no time for that, and much more like here's what you need to know. Here are the main concepts. Do you get it? Here and
that's more the French thing, I think.
It could be, but the subtlety of using PowerPoint versus using something I've written myself in Word and explained using the resources and my experience and focusing on what they need to know has meant that I'm not thinking about the PowerPoint behind me. I'm thinking about let's read this. What do you get from this? Okay, do you understand this? And then they will say something. And the quality of the questions, the quality of the thinking, the quality of their ability to put ideas together is increasing. They're building a body of knowledge. Now, I think I said this, I don't know if I said this earlier in the conversation or when we were speaking, or when we were recording. It's difficult. I can't have an in-depth discussion about some psychology syllabus concept or some business syllabus concept unless they have a body of knowledge from which to call on.
Yeah.
So how can I have a discussion about politics or about the person in the news or about whatever the hell it is, the Queen or the Jubilee, which is currently in my face everywhere in the UK?
Of course.
If I don't know anything about the Queen and the fact that her name was changed from Saxe-Coburg to Windsor and she's actually German, which most people, the kids I teach don't know that. They seem to not know that. But
no, why would they? She's been in power for 70 years.
Well, exactly. So but that knowledge, without that body of knowledge, you can't have a discussion.
Their parents actually were in school. That they stopped teaching that. They stopped teaching the origin of the Queen. Actually, I don't know.
I don't think
it was
taught. No, it was never taught. It was never taught when I was at school. But what's even scarier is that I'm older than some of the parents in sixth form. So, they're like 17.
I'm looking at talking about the political figures and people in power, and now I'm older than them.
Yeah,
like,
isn't that
wow,
that's
like not good?
It isn't, but without a body of knowledge, without an actual spending the time to get to know and think and absorbing that knowledge and learning about things, I can't have a discussion with someone about it, really. And it sounds so stupidly obvious.
But that's what everybody does, and that's what that's what they do on the TV. That's why I don't watch. I mean, it's not why I don't watch TV, but TV sets, they're just like political and or just discussion pundits talking that are just basically arguing. It's arguments on TV where people have no idea what they're talking about, under cameras, under stress of TV, trying to be entertaining, and it's most of it is not that interesting.
And I think it does go back to
and most people have no idea what they're talking about, and it makes sense. I mean, the past few weeks I've been super busy. I stopped following what was going on a day-to-day politics basis. Most people don't have time for that, but they do have strong opinions and beliefs.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that to say, I think if everybody just chilled out for a second and listened to others, not to make an excuse of being a racist at all, but that doesn't mean, and Twitter doesn't help. It really doesn't.
It really doesn't, does it?
Does not help. Really doesn't
so help. True, it does.
And there are so many bots. I know there's a bit of controversy with the news on Elon Musk and bots at the moment. There's so many bots, and this is
are they AI bots that generate content?
The people or AI. Well, so in this video I was just watching. So, and this is a theory from the journalist. He's like, I'm making a theory of something I don't know about a conspiracy theory. So he's like, he underlined that twice. He's like, so both for the irony, but also for the legal perspective, I'm making sure that this is my hypothesis.
Yeah.
He's like, there are things going on that it might go justice-wise, but he didn't say that. He said he gave the buzzword, the phrase in French that makes it sound like there's inquiries going on.
Yeah, okay, right, yeah.
That within the legal system, but it's not official yet.
Okay.
Or whether it will ever be, go figure. Anyway, but he seems to have found out. Have you heard of the guy of Dr. Didier Raoult, French doctor? He became famous internationally. Even his hydrochloroquine supposed treatment to COVID in 2020 that Trump repeated, and anyway, became a well-known figure in conspiracy theories. He has fans for him and people against him, and it's all. This is a guy that nobody had heard of, but unless you were in the research circles that he worked in, because he was a researcher at a medical facility or hospital in Marseille. Anyway, so possibly. So again, this is completely, I don't know if this is true. I'm repeating this from the journalist who suspects it, but he did research for 2 years, so I'm tending to believe this. Not believe, but anyway. But he found out. So he started talking to a lot of people on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Exchanging, and then he was talking to a YouTuber who was telling him, or a Twitter influencer rather than YouTuber. Sorry. Maybe he's a YouTuber now, I'm not sure, who did some research and was trying to debunk this whole doctor's guy, and found out that he has a hordes of people that are pro him, that are encouraging and amplifying his message. But then he was having private message discussions with them, and then he thought, well, maybe I'm gonna. He created a bunch of bots, of fake accounts himself, to have different conversations, and he was seeding different details about himself to different people, and then realizing that this other account knew the detail of this other account. So he was like, wait a minute, is there actually? So before he did multiple accounts, he was talking to multiple people himself.
Yeah.
And then he realized that this person knew details that he'd said in that conversation. So he was like, wait a minute, are these bots? Are these different people that work together, or are they one person? And then he found out that the bots were linked to this woman who owns a digital marketing agency, who is herself working with the communications director of that doctor.
Oh, so this is the future.
So this is
job
what's going
for you.
On is yeah, exactly. What's going on is apparently so possibly the whole phenomenon of this doctor becoming famous and an influencer is a thing that's been engineered by a marketing agency and a communications director, mostly fed through fake accounts. As soon as he was invited on TV to amplify something, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because given all the journalists are looking at what's trending, one, because it's trending, more people will come on board and believe it. And then it snowballs, and journalists like, well, there must be something going on, so I should cover it as part of the news. And then you get more in the news, which is the same thing that was going on with the Trump election. And this is not brand new strategies. People have been doing that for several years off of Facebook and Twitter. Certainly influenced the 2016 election in the States. But it's very, very hard and probably impossible, and this is from me working in digital marketing, to actually figure, really, did it have an influence, and how much? What's for sure is that I am certain people are doing that and try to do it. Now, does it have an influence? Yes. How to measure it and how much? Very, very difficult.
Okay, can we just backtrack and make sure I got what you said? Because you've articulated it in a way I didn't quite know. So you said this. You watched a video of this journalist guy who spoke to a Twitter guy who was speaking and trying to engage with and debunk this doctor.
No, sorry, and I made a mistake. He told two stories of one guy who was pro, one guy who was against.
Okay.
I think this was the debunking guy, but I think it was the debunking.
But the general point is, the guy who was trying to engage with some of the fans of this doctor was engaged with multiple people, and then created multiple accounts to try and engage with them.
So he was engaged with multiple people, and then he found out they had different details, and then he thought he had a hint. He was like, well, wait a minute, are they? So he's like, are they different people who work together? Are they bots? Are they one person?
Yeah.
So then he went into, and this is why they're like, it's going into spy movies. Then he's like, I'm going to create new accounts, because this is spring 2020, and this is a computer, this is like a programmer or something. Then I'm going to create different accounts, and I'm going to try to figure out what's going on, and have multiple conversations with multiple conversations. So it's probably one person under the guise of several, having a conversation with one other person who works for a communication agency, may or may not be in Russia. Go figure. I'm just adding this for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And who is under the guise of several people, and that are all chatting with one another. And so that's on top of that, the amount of fake accounts, bots, that are vehiculing trends to encourage or grow different beliefs, there's so much. But it's really difficult to quantify how much influence that actually has. It definitely has an influence. How much does it change somebody's vote?
It's reminding me.
And so I will to go to err on the side of caution. Without knowing, and nobody has because there's so much data involved. A lot of it private. A lot of it, like, there's different people researching different stuff. You'd have to collate all of it, and every one of those different people researching things have big jobs of their own.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, for example, the person who sifted through the Instagram data to see that it was had a negative influence on teenage women. But then if you look at the charts, it says, 35% of them think it has a negative influence, 35% of them think it has a positive influence. So it depends on how you look at the numbers. But now it's not to deny the importance of the negative feelings, but there's so much data involved, and a lot of it is private in a way that's not accessible. And even if it was accessible, like analyzing it is a massive effort. But Byron Sharp, the marketing science professor at a university in South Australia, who wrote the book How Brands Grow, which is one of the references in branding and marketing, or controversial references. I say controversial because he debunks some core beliefs of some marketing and communication professionals, and he shows numbers and says, actually, that's not true.
I need to read that book. Yeah,
it's good. I like it. It's a little bit, starts to be a bit dated. It has a core, I think, problem, but I'll circle back to that. My point is, what his numbers seem to say, but he doesn't say that particular sentence with numbers, is that advertising, so messages, seem to have a small influence over a long period of time if you keep consistent with them. But I also don't think it's going to change your core beliefs.
Yeah.
So if you really, 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 really believe that vaccines are bad, and that is one of your core beliefs, you can have as many messages as you want about the benefits of vaccines and from as many people as you want. You're more likely to stop believing the person that you believed in before than to change your core belief. You might, now something that is skewing towards what you're believing, but moving it, shifting the needle a tiny bit, has a chance of it being influential. Such as, okay, let's say I don't know, I am, well, I mean, so I don't know. It's difficult to find an example. I'm thinking of examples that I don't know if they work. So I'm trying to.
Well, what you're talking about is actually one of the big modules in the psychology syllabus at A-level, social influence, and people like Stanley Milgram and Philip Zimbardo and the studies.
Yeah, but didn't Milgram's experiments get like massively just put into question at some point as well?
Yeah. Milgram's and Zimbardo's experiments were questioned,
which is also then you put into question a lot of the research in general, which is
correct.
Not,
correct. But you can only start having that kind of discussion if you know what's already there, in my opinion. Right? If I know what research has been done, then that gives me a foundation on which to question the research.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's interesting that, and Moscovici is another researcher who talks about minority.
I've heard his name, but I don't really know him.
So his research suggests that if you've got a minority who are trying to influence the majority, if they're consistent in their view and they are committed, they're willing to do stuff that seems outrageous, and they actually, and this is counterintuitive, if they are willing to compromise a little, they're not absolutely dogmatic in their views, then they're more likely to get people questioning their core beliefs and therefore change them.
Right.
And that was his theory. That's what he proposed. And his research was done on the usual, it's the white, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic students in a university.
That's part of and that's without even questioning the methods of Milgram. I think part of the problem with all psychology social experiments is that. So is that the guinea pigs are the same homogenous social group.
Yep.
And willing students in itself, probably just being a willing student changes what it is.
And
it changes the experiment. I mean,
it does. And then some experiments were redone in other places, and they show different results and blah blah blah. But but without having that base knowledge, how can you have a discussion about anything? And it's so interesting hearing what you're saying about. Imagine if that was an intentional strategy by a marketing agency to build influence on a platform to amplify a conversation that got everyone thinking.
And I know for sure, I've worked for agencies. I know that's what the agencies do. That's what we try to do all the time. And I know that you can if you put the means behind it. and I've seen it happen. So there's also just like a slightly less sinister, or that's to be discussed, less sinister. I found out about this there was, that was last year, when I was teaching my digital brand environment class for the second year students. And I generally look for, before each class, of what's going on in the world of communications and advertising, to find one cool, interesting new campaign that's going on, to open the class with, to say, this is what, have you seen this? This is what's going on. Generally, they haven't seen anything. They don't look at all.
Really?
No.
They're studying the digital brand environment and they haven't looked or see anything? You're kidding me, right?
No, I'm not. No, aside from a couple, generally speaking, they're
wait,
if any of them watch I'll be okay with it, I guess. But my prejudiced perspective on this is that they are coddled. They're coming out of high school and they're in a private school. They have even less or as many or less students in the class than they had in high school, and they're cruising for the most part.
And the digital brand environment,
not that they're not working, but they're still working like in high school.
Yeah.
So they're giving their assignments. They're doing their assignments to varying degrees of interest, depending on the students. Yeah. There are a couple of students who are really taking this very seriously, who know what they want, who want to get into one area or another. There's a majority that are just kind of cruising along, doing a bit of work, trying not to do too much. And then there's a couple that are completely not caring.
But the digital brand environment
all together, it doesn't seem like. Now, there also, don't forget, there's one side that is possibly that explains that is a how do you call that, alleviating factor or something to give them an excuse.
Yeah.
The vast majority are French speakers, and if they follow anything, that's probably what's going on in French advertising communications.
Okay,
they're studying in international and in English. So when I'm teaching, I teach in English, and I encourage them to go look at things in English. But
that's fair enough.
And also the other thing is that they're young. What they follow is Instagram. What they follow is, like, in majority, TikTok and Instagram, and or some of them don't at all, but they're not following the news about the industry. They're following their favorite influencers.
And I've seen it change from Snapchat to Instagram. Well, no, from Facebook to Snapchat to Instagram to TikTok. And I can see it across generations. But the digital brand environment module, does that sit within marketing, right? Or something business? The module you teach?
Yes.
They're doing other modules. What are the other modules they're doing? Can they be doing anything?
No, they are. I'm not. I teach my module. I just walk in and teach my module.
I just wondered.
I know I have the list of. I have the list of disciplines somewhere. Actually, you know what? I can go and find out if you want. Hi.
Davina says hi. If I was doing a marketing, in my head, I imagine it. I'm studying marketing.
I know they have the one that was coupled with me on the second semester was corporate communications.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I teach another module. Let me just. Okay.
Because how could they not be? And the French thing, that's a fair point. Like, okay, they're in French.
Okay, so they have advertised. So this is the name of all the modules. Okay.
Yeah.
Advertising communications. Brand and advertising foundations, digital brand environment. Then they have a business game, so they have a lot of challenges in business games like that.
Yeah,
the school operates by a lot of week-long challenges where they have to be put into teams, operate like a marketing agency, give in a challenge, a brief, put a presentation together, etc. Corporate communication, digital and mobile marketing, which I never understood what the difference was with my thing, but I tried to find out and then I gave up. Communication law. There's another one. French culture, general culture, graphic design.
I do find
that specialism is graphic design. Not everybody does that. Interactive media strategies, ideation and critical thinking. This is second semester.
You can teach that. You can teach ideation and critical thinking.
Media planning, media and society.
So to me, it seems really weird that they're not looking at marketing messages and what's out there as a natural part of the course.
This is a general complaint of the school and the teachers and the faculty. To say this, the students are not looking at as much at enough of the stuff.
Well, yeah, we have the same thing at school as well.
True.
No one's doing any extra reading.
Yes, in our day, we do.
Did I do extra reading? I did. I actually got into reading The Economist.
The youth don't do it as much as when back in my day, I used to read all the articles.
My father reads The Economist.
Oh my gosh! Can you? She's cutting foil. Can you hear that? Is that coming through on my mic?
A little bit. I'm hearing a bits and pieces. So what's happening with the block party? The Queen's Jubilee?
It's happening. The cake has been cooked. I don't know. They've moved all the cars, or some cars have moved, but we'll be out there soon. Hopefully, if it doesn't.
A friend told me, sent me a photo from above of like London in the midst of the Jubilee. You seemed like, and then I answered back and I said, well, but where's Charlie? Oh, Waldo, sorry. In French,
where's Waldo? Charlie. Yeah. Where's Charlie? Yeah. No, very good.
Yeah, which he didn't understand.
But
then I had to explain and send him a photo of where's Waldo.
You know what you're saying about in my day and all of that kind of stuff. That book, The Shallows. You haven't read it, have you?
I have. We talked about it. You haven't even have an episode of it.
Do we? Oh, okay.
More than one. I loved it.
It frightened me. My cognitive structures have changed because of the medium I'm using.
I've been asking my fourth year students if they read. It's a mixed bag, and I've been recommending bullshit jobs to some of them, or giving them some other recommendations.
I read the first.
A lot of them don't, but these are students that did a bachelor's at university, and they're doing a master's in this school now. So they're very different.
Yeah, they're going to be.
I'm not going to teach them next year. We're done with that one.
I read the first 2 pages of bullshit jobs. I was like, oh wow, okay.
Of the preface, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It started as an essay that he wrote just because they were looking for something controversial.
The essay is really good, and it gives you. I mean, I have to read all of his books. He's such a great writer and thinker. It's incredible.
Okay, I'm looking forward to getting into that.
I hope you like it. It's funny
I think I will.
Another friend's first thought was, he was like, I'm not sure I'm following this. Maybe it's because I don't. Actually, I kind of agree and no, but maybe it's because I've never worked in a corporate environment. But I was like, and I told him, listen, I think stick with it because you'll enjoy it. And also, they talk about the problems with academia and admin staff within schools, not just corporate environments.
Yeah.
Or schools have been corporatized anyway.
Well, that is very true. My school is no exception. It has been corporatized. We have a strategic plan.
It's private in the first place, isn't it?
But that's true. We have a strategic plan, and we're supposed to be fulfilling on the strategic plan by doing this, and how does it get measured, and blah blah blah. So I can't wait to start getting into it and reading it.
It's very good.
It does the thing about reading, and it's come up in 3 different books that I've read recently, that reading is one of the first places where we experience flow, and the knock-on effects on our brain and experience of life by having flow experiences and play and all of that.
Yeah.
When we don't read, when reading is taken away, we end up with rotted brains.
Yeah.
As we said in every single one of our episodes, read books.
Yeah. Read books.
And now I'm just becoming even more like, reading books is so pleasurable.
It is. I think I'll just go and read a little bit after this.
Oh, you were going to read a novel rather than nonfiction.
Yeah, I've started. I'm going to pursue No Logo, but I think I will also start a novel. And also, to make up my numbers, novels are read a lot more faster than, well, no.
Oh, my numbers are terrible this year.
Big. No Logo is big, and it's very small type.
It is. I found it quite heavy when I read it. I was like, I'm depressed.
I'm at the very beginning. It's depressing and heavy the way it's written. So it's like, okay, I might read something else. And I have a couple of other books on the go that are nonfiction as well. So,
but what's your number? Your numbers are better than mine. I'm so
my numbers.
Yeah,
my numbers are.
I'm on a pitiful 6.
Oof. No, I'm better than that right now.
6.
Okay, so I have a multiple. So my goal this year is 22 books of novels and nonfictions. 11 large graphic novels, 15 small, which I think I'm going to hold past. Oh, 4 RPG books. I haven't done that at all yet. Okay, so I'm at 9 books. Actually, no, 10 because I haven't written bullshit jobs.
10 of
22.
Okay.
So I'm getting slightly behind, but if I read a couple of novels, I'll catch up fast.
Yeah, you're
and then the rest is on track, pretty much, sort of.
I'm not on track. What's happening here? You're live to our hordes and hordes of audience members. There
Hi.
is so.
What are you doing with your foil?
She can't hear you.
What is Davina doing with the aluminum foil?
She with the aluminum foil. She is changing the color of her. Oh, she's removing her nails. I meant to open this. Oh, sorry. Why?
Slowly. Turn it. Open it like.
Oh, I see.
Are she painting Union Jacks on her nails now?
Davina, are you painting Union Jacks on your nails? In homage to the Queen. Because we both love the Queen.
Yes, of course. But you can't say you don't love the Queen during the Platinum Jubilee. That'd be.
God save the Queen, the fascist regime, as the Sex Pistols said.
Have you followed? And this is something I need to, because I haven't been able to follow too closely. The debacle fiasco last weekend with the Liverpool Madrid game in Paris and the police assaults.
Well, I heard it on the news
in Paris, and the people from Liverpool and the world and Britain, hopefully the world, discovering how violent the French police are.
Well, I when I heard it, and I heard about the French police, I was like, Willem's been talking about this. Mm-hmm. And then it did remind me of, and I think it's reminded a lot of people who may be a bit older than me of what happened when English teams were in Europe in the 80s and why English teams were banned and all of that rubbish.
Well, which is, of course, what the French media and the French politicians have been saying.
Yes. I think it would be spun that way, even if it's not true.
Sorry, not exactly.
Okay.
The French extreme right have even managed to immediately say it had nothing to do with any of the British or anybody else. It has to do with the fact that the stadium is around an area where there's a lot of immigrants, so it's their fault.
You're kidding.
No,
wow.
Not at all.
And that,
they said
has that narrative got any traction?
Was like, no, but that area is not even France. It's because of all their immigrants that are there. With anything. I don't think they even talk. So this is just surface stuff because I've only been able to see headlines. But apparently, yeah, it's like, yeah, no, all the immigrants, they stopped the football stadium. The police had to stop them. It had nothing to do with gassing kids and people going, oh yeah,
that's ridiculous.
I saw a comedy, a humorist who does go on so his segment on the radio is that he basically sort of puts light and pokes fun at the ignorance of people by asking pointed questions and going to either salon events, goes on markets, talks to old people who are basically just scarily, now he goes to specific neighborhoods, but generally speaking, it's scary how just bigoted, racist, and ignorant the people he talks to are. And in this case is going to talk, what do you think would happen with the Liverpool? It's like, well, they're English. What do you expect? Tell me more. What does that actually mean? It's like, well, but then he was like, but seriously, the police was gassing, they were kids with their parents. What do you think that's okay? Well, what were they doing there? What do you mean, the kids? Yeah, what were they doing there in the first place? They shouldn't be there. He was like, well, they were going to a football game with their parents. Yeah, that's not no proper behavior for a child to be able to see. Like, okay.
Oh my god!
And then another one going, well, no, they're the English. The English, they have the channels between them. There's the channels between our two countries is for a reason. They should stay on their side of it. Things like that.
That sounds like an English person.
Oh, well, it's not random that there's like 2-3 elections out of the 5, and the last 2, the extreme right gets to the second round. And even if for the people who don't vote for the extreme right, there's the amount of racist people in this country is crazy. And actually, it's in the world. Racism is very strong in the world.
Yeah.
So, and I actually think that what we were saying earlier on, you know, not being able to have a conversation with people about what's going on and what they believe in, and immediately saying racism is wrong, so we don't talk about it, or not that we don't talk about it, we just we be anti-racist, and we shun them, and we yell against them, and then you don't have any opportunity to exchange. And I'm not saying racism is good. I don't, you know, we all have our biases. We all have our. Come on, if I'm in the middle of the night in a neighborhood I'm not familiar with, I don't know what's going on, I might be worried about what's going on. It's just fear and prejudice in the first place. We all have our own prejudices.
Yeah.
No, it's super, very cheesy what I'm saying. It doesn't mean anything. But being like, you know, witch hunting in the 1600s in the northern England, in New England, didn't do much else than just like punishing innocent women. And if you ask, some people will go, yeah, there must have been one real witch in the middle. It was worth it.
Oh my gosh. You've also reminded me of what might be a good place to bring it to a close, because I do have to go, listening.
Yes.
And so much about listening. People think listening is saying your piece, saying you've understood someone and then waiting to reply. And genuine listening means I actually have to be willing to let go of what I'm thinking. I have to be able to consider that somebody else has a different view to me. And I think Davina was smiling there because I spend a lot of time not listening to her.
No, I spend a lot of time not listening to you. We're learning all the time, even after 20 years.
That's great. I think we can come to a close there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I need to click the button to stay.
Yeah.
Stop. There we go. Until next time.
Until next time.